Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome to what is becoming a bit of a regular feature on the channel, the review of a Scottish watch. It's great to see a whole bunch of small companies like Xebec and Morar, as well as others I haven't reviewed like Anordain and Pollen, all coming from my mother country. Today I'm reviewing the Photic by Clemence, a brand based in the nation's capital, Edinburgh. Now, if you haven't been to Edinburgh, you need to add it to your bucket list. I lived there for a total of 4 years and have very happy memories of the place. The city is pure picture postcard perfect, with an old town featuring the castle, Holyrood Palace and the Scottish Parliament, and with a new town that is still pretty old to be honest, and very different but just as easy on the eye. Talking of which, this is Tom Clemence, the brand owner. He's young, he's handsome, he has a full head of brown hair, and he has his own watch brand. I pretty much hate him already. Seriously Tom, well done, you have created a watch befitting of the city it comes from. Though as always, I have found something to complain about. One detail that would take this Photic diver from good to great. Let's flip the camera and find out what it is. Now before we go on, I'm sure you saw the pop-up, but I forgot to play the siren, so this video is sponsored by Clemence Watches, and they sent me the full kit. I'll talk about price now because it is relevant at this point. These are £429 because obviously this is a Scottish watch, so we're dealing in pounds today. That's on the Tropic strap. It's an extra 50 quid if you want the bracelet. Tom sent me both in with my package today. Talking of packaging, that's all very nice. Everything is biodegradable. They have included a screwdriver for the screw link bracelet. They have included a spring bar removal tool to help you take the bracelet off if you do opt for the bracelet and Tropic strap combo. Drilled lug holes in the case, which is nice, and quick release spring bars in the Tropic strap, which is also nice. And continuing the environmentally friendly theme, Clemence double offset the carbon footprint associated with each watch, and they plant one tree for every watch sold. Apparently I got a downy birch, and if you follow the link on their website, enter the 3 words, it shows you exactly where that tree is planted. I did just that, and believe it or not, my tree is planted in North Ayrshire, where I grew up. It's only about 5 miles away from my mum's house. Maybe I will visit my tree the next time I'm back in Scotland. But come on Jody, this isn't just one more tree, this is just one more watch. Tell us about the watch. Well, this is Clemence's first offering, and I think it is remarkably good for a debut attempt. Doesn't really feel like it. It's quite a resolved design end to end, this one. Like I said, I've got a couple of niggles and one moan, but I'll save that for a bit later on in the video. Clearly retro styling inspired by the dive watches of the 1950s and the 1960s, and as such it has that slightly smaller set of dimensions. So 39mm in diameter, only 12.5mm thick, with a 47 lug to lug, 20mm lug width, bit of a taper down to 18 back up to 20 at the clasp, sized up for me, 7-inch wrist, 154 grams. All stainless steel case, 6.4-inch crown, stainless steel coinage bezel. It is quite a slim bezel, I guess it's only 12.4mm thick, and a slim bezel is part of that. Screw links in the bracelet as discussed earlier on, solid end links and drilled lugs. Now the clasp is a big one, I'm sure there's a few grams gone into this. It does have a diver extension, helpfully pointed out there with an etching. 3 holes of micro adjust. It has a milled upper and a milled lower with double security pushers. And the case finish is lovely, very, very nice indeed. Screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistance, but in that retro style it is unguarded. If I stick a bit of macro in here, you can see just how fine the brushing is on that mid case and on those upper lug surfaces. And you can also see there's a high polish chamfered edge entirely circling the case, so all the way around the upper surface, all the way around the lower surface of the watch as well. And I particularly like the way the tip of the case, the lug there, just angles down ever so slightly. You can see it more on the lower surface. Helps bring that spring bar down, helps it sit very nicely on wrist. Double domed sapphire crystal with 6 layers of anti-reflective undercoating apparently. Yeah, you can see the undercoating in my studio lights. You can also see quite a bit of reflection though. I guess it's a retro style, a vintage style watch, so it just about gets away with it. Perhaps an extra couple of layers though might have helped here. Bezel is a 120 click unidirectional dive time, though I suspect this one probably won't be timing too many dives. Perhaps parking meters and eggs are more appropriate. Everything lines up nicely, and that is a sapphire bezel insert. It is slightly bulbed, much like the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, again going for that 50-60 styling. Bracelet's very nice, 3-link oyster style, brushed to match the surfaces of the watch, the side surface and the upper lug surface of the watch. Female end link there, so 47mm lug to lug plus a female end link means smaller wrist, no problem at all with this one. Screw links as discussed, and they're good solid thick screws. I had no problem sizing it. And pleasingly, there is no end-link rattle whatsoever, all very well put together. More nice touches on the screw-down stainless steel caseback with sapphire exhibition, those being individually numbered. I have number 123 there, which is very nice, and it has a Photic custom rotor. Photic, by the way, the name of the watch. The Photic zone is the area from sea level down to 200 metres of depth. This being a 200-metre dive watch, that seems appropriate. I'm sure most of you will be able to recognise a Miyota 9000 series through the caseback these days. Lovely striping, little bit of decoration, and that signature rotor with the 3-screw attachment in the centre. Happy to see this one on the time grapher. Look at that, what a result. Bang on zero, rock solid. These ones have a roughly 40-hour power reserve, 24 joule. They hack, but they only wind in one direction, meaning you do get a little bit of rotor noise, a little bit of spinning with this one. And I think perhaps because of the exhibition caseback, that is noticeable with the Photic. But I'll probably forgive it just this once because look at that trace. And I think it's a handsome watch as well, but then again I would do because I'm a sucker for this retro look. I'm also a sucker for black and gilt, which is why I picked this specific colourway. There is a blue-black fade dial and there is a blue dial. You can get them with white surrounded indices. I went for this rose gold tone and I think it looks gorgeous. So the Clemence C kind of half moon logo printed beneath the applied 12, the Arabic at 12, Photic underneath that, and just automatic in italicized script and 200 metres printed above the Arabic at 6. Applied rectangular batons everywhere else, and a printed minute track around the outer edge. And something you don't notice at first glance necessarily, but yet another nice touch is the dial actually slopes away at the edges. You can just about see it in these two different pieces of angled footage. It creates an interesting visual effect with the domed sapphire crystal, and it makes those indices look like they're standing even prouder from the dial than they actually are. And it's an elegant but slightly different handset, tapered triangles, and a good size too. That minute hand just touches the edge of that printed minute track just as the dial begins to slope away from it. And I always like a loomed diamond on a second hand. It always just adds a little touch of class. And also it's always nice to see a sapphire bezel insert. You still don't get too many of them, which is surprising because it's a really nice effect. Again, that links in nicely with the domed sapphire crystal. Plus there's that ring of stainless steel in between the sapphire crystal and the sapphire bezel insert. You'll see how that plays with the light when I get the watch on wrist in just a second. Bezel markings though are somewhat minimal. Like I said, this one more a desk diver than an out and out diving tool. That's not to say that it doesn't have some decent lume on it though. Those large applied indices, the Arabics at 12 and 6, and the markings in the sapphire bezel insert, all full of C3, 8 layers of C3 apparently. When I turn the speed up on this one, it's actually still doing well by the time we get to the end of the 20 minutes. Looks to my eye more like old radium style. It's got that slightly deeper green hue, but they don't say that, they just advertise it as C3 on the Clemence website, so I'll take Tom's word for it. On wrist, it is a lovely looking watch, and if I roll my wrist, you can see what I mean about that ring of steel separating the sapphire crystal from the sapphire bezel insert. That catches the light very nicely, as do those rose gold applied indices and hands. Elsewhere though, brush finish tones things down, and yeah, that large and chunky clasp, more on that later, does at least keep the watch balanced. Overhead legibility is pretty good though. A couple more coats of anti-reflective undercoating would not have gone amiss here. I suspect that the silver toned versions, the silver hands and silver index models, will be even more legible than these rose gold ones, but at least the handset is nicely sized, nicely proportioned. Outside, when there is more ambient light, again you can see the crystal just struggling a little bit there, quite a lot of reflection from it. You can still see the hands though from all angles, which is not too bad I suppose. And on wrist, there it is again, that fantastic wrist roll. The whole thing really comes alive when you get it at the right angle. And looking down the wrist, I did manage to get a good fit on this one, even though the clasp only has a couple of holes of micro adjust available, more on that later. And I do think that little downturn just at the tips of the lugs definitely helps with that. But as signposted way back in the intro, I do have a couple of niggles and one moan with the Clemence Photic. One of the niggles, now I couldn't actually find my warranty card, maybe I have misplaced it, but I am led to believe that it only comes with a 1-year warranty. Please clarify with Clemence regarding that one. If it is only 1 year, then that is 1 year less than I am happy with. I think 2 years is the industry standard and should be the standard for all mechanical watches these days. But my big moan with this one is the clasp. Overall, the watch is stylish, it picks up those 50s, 60s cues with aplomb. That just doesn't belong on this watch at all. There's nothing about that clasp that says 1950s, 1960s, is there? That clasp is pure 2020s. And there's always a compromise with these things. There is 3 holes of micro adjust available here, but chances are you'll be using that diver extension. Wasn't really need to signpost that one either, I don't think. Overall, it's just a bit big and bulky and it doesn't really suit the watch. I mean, that's it next to the clasp on my Oris Diver 65, another retro-styled watch from the similar period. This isn't the poster boy, this Oris clasp. I'm not saying that every watch should have one, but yeah, I think the Clemence one is a bit too big and bulky. No problem, Jody, I hear you say. This one is available on a Tropic strap for £50 less. Just buy that version instead. And yes, it is available on a rather good FKM style Tropic strap. FKM rubber is always more compliant and more comfortable than regular rubber. It's kind of becoming an industry standard these days. So it's a good Tropic strap. And I have to say, the watch does look pretty hot on the Tropic. It just adds that extra textural element, all those little cross hatchings that you can see there on the Tropic strap. And as the overall design of the watch is very much 50s and 60s, the Tropic strap fits in with that nicely. And yet, I have one niggle about the Tropic strap. The quick release spring bars in the Tropic strap are actually too narrow for the Tropic strap. They rattle around somewhat unnervingly, not a great feeling on wrist. Easy fix though, you can just pop those ones out and put some thicker ones in, but that's something that Clemence should have done from the factory, not something that should be handed over to customers. So where does that leave us then? Well, I think it leaves us with a good watch that isn't all that far away from being a great watch. British assembly, not to be sniffed at for the price that they're charging. I think the price is perfectly reasonable. I like the fact that it comes with a free tree, particularly as my free tree was in North Ayrshire. And overall, I love the number of nice, neat touches with this one. The domed sapphire crystal, the bubbled sapphire bezel, the dip from the edge of the dial, the neat chamfering on the case, the individual numbering, and the Miyota movement that was spot on accurate. It's a shame then that the clasp simply doesn't match the rest of the watch in terms of its style, I don't think. Something smaller, something neater, and something more reflecting this watch's undoubted role as a desk diver would have been more appropriate than the big and bulky diver's extension clasp. But overall, a really strong first effort, and I hope that there are more Clemence watches in the future. You just can't have too many Scottish watches, I don't think. So there you have it, the Clemence Photic, a lovely watch with a lovely clasp that belongs to an entirely different watch. If you haven't had enough of Scotland today, I can't blame you for that. Why not check out my review of the Xebec Corsair on the Marlowe Pacific. Thanks for watching, I'll see you again in a future video.